Hi everybody, I'm Elise Pipnick from ISLES. We are a community, 42-year-old community development organization that has been involved in environmental health, really starting from the time in the year 2000 when we completed an environmental health profile of the city of Trenton and compared health data from a neighborhood in Trenton. Compared it to, was a neighborhood that had a brownfield site. We compared it to the data to the city as a whole, then to New Jersey as a whole, and even some federal data. And no surprise, we found that things were a lot worse in that area around the brownfield. Things were compared even to the city of Trenton, and then things were worse in Trenton compared to the state as a whole, etc. This data probably doesn't surprise you. I also wanted to start by saying we have been doing environmental health training and healthy homes training, I think since about, we've had a training center that's now, I think, 12 years old, and we've been doing education in people's homes, you know, starting with education about asthma triggers, and then later on lead, having home testers. And I like to share this story because I still see this person in the community, and he always tells me that I changed his life. I said, what happened? He said, well, until I heard you speak, I always went home to my easy chair and would sit in it for, you know, a few minutes. I was resting, and, you know, within 10 minutes, my eyes would start to itch, and I'd kind of get, my eyes be watery, I get a little sniffy, and I thought, well, I'm just tired, I'm going to sleep. Well, it turns out, after hearing our presentation, he took out the plug-in air fresheners in his house, and he says it made a huge, huge difference in his life. And I know from visiting many, many homes in Trenton, plug-ins are a very culturally satisfying piece to have in your house. You want your house to smell pretty. There's been houses I've been in where, you know, one room is lemon mist, the other room is meadowlark, the other room is such and such. And, you know, then you hear the story about someone moving into a house and they close the door at night to sleep, and all that aroma is concentrated, and when they pulled it out, it made a huge difference. So anyway, that made me think about that when folks were talking about that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about our training. We've had this training center for a long time, and it's covered really many of the things that the panel here before spoke about, and we're always adding things to it. So beyond just healthy homes, we talk a lot about, you know, other chemicals, etc. But we have a starting point for offering this training in the community, and as Anthony knows, we welcome anybody. We will offer the course virtually statewide. We've got a short course for residents if they want to take it, and we also have a long course, which is a full day for community health workers and any home visitors, anyone who's going into a home to check for lead hazards, asthma triggers, injury conditions, etc., to improve housing. So this is ISLES. We have a mission to foster self-reliant families and healthy, sustainable communities, and I think very important is we share what we learn with others who can make a difference, and that's kind of why we're here today. Next slide. All right, so here's the 8 keys to a healthy home, and then just, you know, here's a little preview. What I'm going to be adding today is another key to a healthy home, which is building electrification, and I know that's been referred to in the earlier panel, but we now consider that a part of a healthy home. How do you get the greenhouse gases out of your home? And there's a whole national movement, as we know, that is now in place to help us. So we're going to talk about dry, safe, clean, pest-free, maintained, ventilated, contaminant-free, and energy efficient. All right, next slide. So you want to keep your house dry, how the water enters the building. Obviously you got rain that can come into your basement, into your windows. You got shower leaks. You've got plants that are full of moisture and it's not well maintained. You've got a roof leak, steam in your kitchen. You got a cat who's breathing too much. and you know, all sorts of drain pipes that aren't working, air from the soil, the water vapor that's coming in. Anyway, cooking, bathing, you got it. So the challenge is how to manage moisture in your home, and it's not easy, right? Even if you're in the best maintained house, you still can have problems. And if you are in substandard housing that's not well maintained, like a lot of renters have, you are exposed. And I've been into housing developments, public housing, where there's rampant respiratory problems, sinus infections and stuff, and you go look in the bathrooms, for example, or look in the kitchens, and you can see the mold and moisture that's not been contained, and it's wrong. Next slide. All right, so you want to have your house clean, and you want it to be easily cleanable. Well, so you see a problem right here. And this is pretty common in a lot of houses, and maybe all of you maybe you have a room in your garage or part of your garage that looks like this. You know, the clutter is really hard to deal with, and that's just great harborage for all sorts of rodents and cockroaches and stuff. You got allergens, pest dropping, pesticides, heavy metals, reduce, and again, the harborage for pests. So I'm not saying it's easy to keep our houses clean, but you know, there's, you know, one house I was in, I'll never forget this one. The woman proudly pointed to all the clean laundry on the bed in the child's room. Well, it turns out that laundry hadn't been folded. It'd been there for months, and it was like an apartment building for mice. Next slide. So you want to keep it safe. This is, you know, get your door locks on, get your baby gates in, get your chemicals far away from where a child could reach it and be poisoned by it. Next slide. Keep it pest-free. Probably people in this room know that cockroaches and rodents are the biggest cause of asthma in our cities. Dust mites are considered the biggest trigger in suburban areas. And it's not easy to keep pests out of your house, but we've worked on this for a while. We have a wonderful film, if anyone wants to see it. It's called The Pests in Your Nest. And I'm sure Brian Buckley was one of our talking heads in that. Next slide. And you want to keep it safe using safe products. So if the one huge message we try to, we make again and again with folks is do not spray. Do not spray anything. You know, hair products, you know, pesticides, etc. You know, before I started doing this work, I was guilty of chasing, you know, a bug across the room with a can, thinking I was doing a great job. You know, we all, you know, most of the spray products don't work now, and you want to be using gels, roach baits, etc. Anyway, but the whole point is don't spray, and you want to get the pests out of your house, and you need to seal. I actually helped my daughter. She was living in a college house, and they were paying a huge amount of money to also host a lot of mice and cockroaches. And I went in there with all my tools, and I sealed her room. And she had whatever was climbing in the walls, etc., they did not come into her room. They bypassed her room and got into the other rooms. So it can make a big difference. She suddenly had some respect for what I've been doing. Next slide. Obviously, you want things contaminant-free, lead from housing, water, and soil. And I always like to add this in my presentations. If you're going to put something in a population to keep them down for generations to come, it would be lead. And that's from Dr. Hannah Atisha. She's a pediatrician from Flint who first understood the impact of changing the Flint water and what was happening to children. Next slide. Health effects of lead, I think this group knows, and you know, reduced IQ, learning disabilities, kidney damage, blah, 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 read the list. It's bad, it's bad. Next slide. So here we are, chemical hazards in your home. There's the plug-in that we emphasize in our trainings. Candles, aroma products, allergy, you get the idea. Next slide. Triggers for asthma, there we have our cockroach, we have dust, we've got pets, we've got secondhand smoke, as Brian said, the nasties from secondhand smoke, aerosol cans, pollen. Next slide.
And why well ventilated? Because pollutants found in concentrations 2 to 5 times higher indoors than outdoors. And next slide. Why well ventilated? These are all the things that you have to worry about. We talked about them: moisture, tobacco smoke. At the end now I've added greenhouse gases, methane and benzene. So next slide. Carbon monoxide. So there you see your gas stove, you got gas heated water heaters and devices, you got a gas car, wood stoves. Anyway, keep it in place. Keep it energy efficient. You can see all the places where energy is lost, and that's important. And now the next slide. So why add building electrification for a healthy home? We can further protect health. We can improve the environment by reducing greenhouse gases, and we can save money for consumers. Next slide. So 26% of New Jersey greenhouse gases come from buildings. I think the number for the nation is about, I think it's 13%, but obviously New Jersey is very urbanized. On-site pollution from appliances is linked to asthma, cardiovascular disease, birth defects. Burning fossil fuels in homes led to an estimated 884 early deaths and 9.9 billion in health impact costs in 2017. And children living in homes with gas cooking stoves have a 42% higher risk of current asthma. Next slide. So low-income households, especially vulnerable to pollution from buildings, because it's smaller unit size, you have more people per home, you've got older homes that have inadequate ventilation, they're using the stove and oven for supplemental heat, and we've seen that a lot in the houses in Trenton that we visit. High exposure to outdoor pollution, and again, the greater asthma burden. So what are the solutions? Is to upgrade your home with clean energy devices. This is what a heat pump looks like on those two photos on the left. That's what a heat pump looks like. And I'm not going to get into the details for how it works, but it brings air in from the outside, etc., and makes it usable for either heating or cooling in our homes. That's what an induction stove looks like. It's not like my mother's stove from the old days with the electric coils. It's very clean. Next slide. And this is the asthma statistics again about gas stoves. Basically, you know, you have a combustion device, and you're like burning a little fire in your home when you're using gas-fired pieces. Okay, next slide. Burning fossil fuels. Again, all the products: nitrogen oxides, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide. You know this stuff. 73% of New Jersey households rely on natural gas as their primary heating fuel. By the way, what do you think about that term, natural gas? You think that means something? You think it's like it's a natural product? No, it's a great marketing tool, isn't it? We're using natural gas in our houses as if it's like grown from the ground and is pesticide free or something. Anyway, and then 9% use propane and fuel oil. Next slide. Oh, kind of. So I'm going to just leave you with one thought, and I've been starting to present on this more and more, and I came across a great article. So you're probably aware now it's become this huge politically polarizing thing about gas stoves. Don't steal my gas stove, don't steal my electric light, don't, you know, all the stuff that's going on that's polarized in such a crazy way. But I was reminded, or I learned that at the turn of the century, you know, into the 20th century, all of our street lamps in our country were fueled with gas. And there was a movement to change over to electric. And it was the same argument. It's really kind of weird. It's eerie, actually. You know, you had a lot of profit from the gas companies, but they also had a product that was smelly and, you know, it was hot in the, toxin producing, hot in the summers, etc. And there was entrenched industries, there was legislation to oppose electric lights, and over time, the electric won over for many of the reasons I think we'll have that in this country. And I was left with kind of an idea of, you know, it's like electric of David and gas is Goliath. You know, once again, we're going to be, you know, an uphill battle on trying to electrify devices. And right now, you've got the fossil fuel merchants in this state that have spent over $1 million trying to convince us that fossil fuels are better, that we can't afford the electric, etc. And what I've learned is that, think about this, if it takes 30 units of energy to heat a room with gas, it takes 15 to heat a room with electric. And so it's cheaper, it's more efficient. And so don't be fooled by the fact that each one unit, it might cost more than the other, but it's just more efficient.
Hi everybody, my name is Anthony Diaz. I'm the co-founder and executive director of the Newark Water Coalition. So one of the things that we've done recently, what I like to say is we are in our researcher arc as an organization. So I'm very thankful for Dr. Lumbach, Dr. Buckley, and Sean Stratton for their continuing partnership, friendship, and relationships that have allowed the Newark Water Coalition to really become the lead experts in Newark. So due to the water crisis in the city of Newark, you know, we became very mission-driven and service-oriented around just providing people with clean water. But then it wasn't enough for me. It was like we had so many questions about lead, so many questions about social apportionment, so many questions just in general that we wanted to figure out. And so we started working on, okay, what are we really being exposed to? And it became like this interesting, bittersweet journey, again, of like, wow, everything can really kill me, but why don't I know about this? And why doesn't my community know about this? And so what we started doing, you know, especially with a lot of the grants we received is, okay, we need to do education to our community. We purchased an XRF gun. And like with us, we were like, you know, kind of like kids in a candy shop. We were shooting everything that we could with it. We were, all right, we have soil, let's test this soil. We have this paint, let's test this paint. And then taking that information and telling our people, like, these are the things that you're being exposed to. And I think for me, kind of the biggest thing or the aha moment for a lot of people when we started testing consumer goods. And we started testing plates, we started testing cups. And then people would come in and be like, I've been using this teacup for the last 25 years, what do you mean it has lead? Or I've had that, you know, ceramics, and I think Janice is in the room too, and you know, she, from Clinton Hill Community Action, was mentioning, oh, I saw your video on Instagram, and then I started questioning what I had in my home. So it's like, you know, and that's why I asked the panel before this, is like, okay, like, how can we, as organizations, you know, provide this information? And I love that answer of like, the onus shouldn't be on us. You know, the onus shouldn't be on the individual that has so many individual and personal fires to put out. So, you know, as an organization, especially a community group, one of the things that I believe in is like, in order for people to advocate for themselves, they have to meet their basic needs. And so we try to meet people's basic needs and then give them the education. And then, you know, recently what I would say a step further is the language justice aspect. Is that community members, especially in the Hispanic and Portuguese communities which we service, they care about these things, but often academics or researchers or other groups wouldn't advocate for these things or give them the information in their languages. And so we started disseminating that information in their languages, and then all of a sudden, they started showing up. They started caring about these things. And there's so many different things that we're being exposed to, especially in the home, that have like these little effects that I just never could have imagined. Cassie and I were recently at an event in Trenton, and she decided to scan her keys with the XRF gun, and it came up with lead, and I was like, you know, shocked again. Never would have thought. But there are helpful things and hopeful things that we can do. I think one of the things that I learned about was, you know, removing your shoes or having a doormat removes the lead exposure by 80% in the home. So something that I always thought was annoying was actually saving my life. And so these are the things that we try to educate our people on and let them know, like, there are small tidbits of things that you can do. And recently, at that same event, or I guess Rutgers was doing blood testing, and I had my blood tested. And I had lead. I didn't have a high amount of lead, but I still had lead in my blood. And so again, it's one of these things where it's like, our people, if they were exposed or if our people had the opportunity to receive services, then they would care about the issues that are going on in this room. Because everybody should care. And everybody should know that this affects them, and this has, like, you know, residual effects, maybe not direct effects on our lives, but it has certainly residual effects. How we study, how we move, how we operate in life. And, you know, I always like to share, as a result of our work, we're creating already a kind of organic pipeline of community members who are more interested in this work, more interested in finding exposures, more interested in doing the research. I'm now trying to pair them with the resources that we've collected over the years in order to deepen, again, these relationships and take it even further. So, you know, I won't go on too much more, but I like to say that I'm just very thankful and appreciative of spaces like this that allows this kind of addition of community organizations with researchers and academics, because we have to play, as community leaders and organizers, we play the role of middlemen. We play the role of translators. We play the role of, like, hey, this is what's going on, and this is why you should care this is going on. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian Buckley from UHSI. I don't have a whole lot to say other than you see two absolutely outstanding examples of community-initiated action where the community can take care of the things that are most important to it, but more importantly, mitigate change. One of the things as academics we're really good at is figuring out all of those 10,000 things that will kill you, everything in your house will kill you. We do a real good job of that. But Anthony's question before about why don't we get the message out, part of it is on us. We move on to the next thing that will kill you without spending enough time telling everybody. Sometimes people don't listen. You know, we publish, we try to present, we offer newspaper opportunities or press releases or whatever else, and people don't listen. But the real message, when it comes from people in the community to community members, that's when it's received the best. So the partnerships, our ability to figure out what puts you at risk and how we think the best way to mitigate that risk is, will fall on deaf ears unless we have partners. And I'm very grateful to have partners like ISLES and Trenton and Newark Water Coalition and all of the other folks who can really take our message and bring it out. Because that's where prevention is done, that's where it's the most effective, that's where people will take home that message. I can talk about years of research figuring out all of those things that will kill you. You tell me what it is, I'll tell you how it'll kill you. But that's not what's important. What's important is to figure out what are the things creating the greatest risk to our New Jersey communities, and how do we help people within the community help themselves to mitigate that risk. That's my message.
Okay, we have time for some questions
Then, right? We have a lot of time for some questions?
Absolutely.
First of all, just for people to understand who's in the room, can the researchers in the room stand up? The researchers in the room stand up. Okay, everybody look around. These are the researchers. Okay, now you guys sit down. Now I'm going to bring up the community. You guys that are in community-based organizations or public policy organizations around the state, stand up. Okay, so at lunch, I hope that you guys make those connections and introduce yourself to one person that you've never met before. So now let's, now that I did that, let's do questions from the audience, okay? Jersey City's in the house, by the way.
Yeah, I had a really good question I wanted to ask about. You're talking about the communities and relationships. Just take one successful program, and why can't that be a model for other things? So you had talked about the baby bottles, or someone had talked about that. how did that go about? Or like parabens, we talked about them still being in products when, you know, the suntan lotions, that became a real no, don't do it. And I think a lot of them now say no parabens. So how did some of those successful programs work? And it's not always the government stepping in, because they don't always have the solutions. And you've got a lot of fake news, fake science also that gets in the way of a lot of that. So what are some models that have worked?
I want to answer that question because my comment is, it's very hard to replicate success because communities are so hyperlocal. We operate 3 distribution centers in the city of Newark. The city of Newark has 320,000 people, 5 wards. We're in the East Ward, the South Ward, and the West Ward. All 3 of those wards are radically different and have radically different needs. And I guess the first step is, how are you building trust in that community? Because the people that you build trust with are the people that are going to be your strongest advocates. So that's where I would say it's like, you know, you can take best practices from across the board and maybe there's, you know, little things here and there, but it's always about the relationships you have and building in that community and building the trust in that community, first and foremost. Because once you do that, then everything else kind of falls into place. But we try to look at, okay, this has been successful over here, and this has been successful over here, so let me try to merge those 2 things, and then oftentimes that's where we have our I don't want to say biggest failures, but we have like a lot, we're like, why isn't this working the same? And it's because we're not looking at it, well, this is an individual community with different needs, with different people in it, and let's look at it very like firsthand, with new eyes. And it's even hard for me, you know, I've been organizing for so long, so I'm like, I'm the expert on organizing, I know everything. But then oftentimes I'm met with an issue where I'm like, oh wow, I really don't know everything and I have to change my perspective on this.
Thank you.
I thought Anthony was going to bring up a very recent example of a great community-driven success because he was one of the major driving forces with it. Flint, Michigan happened. We knew there was lead in water. All of a sudden, they started doing assays and expanding where the tests were being done in Newark, and guess what? They found out Newark had the same problem that Flint did, and in fact, the concentrations in the water were much higher. And the speed in which the detection of the lead in water to the governor signing off on, we're going to replace every lead service line in Newark, was amazingly fast. And I will tell you, that is, while we tossed in our comments and our whatever else, that was a community-based, community-driven, ground-up initiative that got traction, and part of it was there are a lot of community groups in Newark, and they all said, no, we all agree on this one, get the lead out of the water. That was a great community success story. Yeah.
Just add that, again, IOS offers this 8 keys to a healthy home, now 9 keys. And if communities are interested in using the tool, they can gather folks together. We offer it virtually. More and more we could offer it in person. But you may decide to do it as a community organizing tool. When you listen to the course, you know, and I've been a teacher of it for many, many years, it doesn't go 10 minutes before someone raises their hand and asks me about their basement. So it becomes personal very, very quickly, and it gets people talking. So if you want to be part of that, we've got the resources.
And there are efforts in Trenton as well, which is where Isles is located, that are still in the early stages, but fingers crossed, the community groups are going to make some changes there too. So.
Hi, thank you. I'm Denisa Lizanova from Rutgers EOC. I have a question for Elise. In one of your slides, there was something that caught my eye. There was a picture of antibacterial detergent, and above it there was written superbacteria. Is it something with giving rise to bacterial resistance, or can you expand on this? What was meant?
I wish I was the expert here to talk about that. It's a slide that's been in for a long time, but I can get back to. I don't know how to answer that.
Okay. Thanks anyway.
I'm going to address the community. We're going to make something available soon, so we just submitted the renewal of our center, in IHS Center. We just got approved for another 5 years, unofficially. We haven't got the notice yet, but we got a good score. And part of that was we expanded two things. One was the ability of communities to actually apply for grants from our center, so we encourage you to do that. And the other one is that we partnered with the University of Chicago, who also has a center, and they have this tool that they developed called Enviro Report, and it's an app you put on your phone, and you'll be able, if you see something or you suspect something, you can report it to us, and we'll help you investigate and make some kind of recommendations on what should be done or what can't be done. So just look out for that. We'll make it available as soon as we get the maps of New Jersey. It'll actually drop a pin for us where you're seeing this. If you see an explosion or a leak, a gas leak, a oil leak, whatever, you can just report it and we'll follow up on it.
Can you repeat the name of the app?
Enviro Report.
Is it available on the?
It's not available yet. It is available from the University of Chicago. We're working with a company now to put the maps of New Jersey into that system.
Enviro Report.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. I'm Cassie Bollinger. I work staff a collaborative that works on lead poisoning prevention in New Jersey. Thank you, everyone, for being here and for these great speakers. I like that this conversation has gone a lot towards not necessarily thinking of healthy homes as an individual problem and as a social widespread problem that individuals are not necessarily responsible for the environments that have been polluted by others. So I wonder, I think I have a question about the healthy homes aspect and the indoor pollution. Are we aware of any social support programs that help people with healthy homes in particular, aside from the advocacy and policy about products and outreach and awareness? I wonder, Elise, if you've heard of anything like that. And then my other question, I think, is for Dr. Buckley to kind of speak to, and Anthony to speak to how useful and important relationships with universities that have significant grant funding that goes to community members involved has been for you. So that was a big question, but.
All right, well, if I have this microphone, I'll try and go first. There are community groups throughout the country who take on this challenge of healthy homes. IELTS has been in this business since 2000. We started out with an environmental health profile of the city, and that data drove us. It's like, whoa, look at this disproportionate, incidence of asthma and lead poisoning and other things. And so that was our, clarion call to get busy. And there are groups throughout the country. Amazing work, Rochester, New York on lead. Buffalo, New York City, Massachusetts. There's a lot of interest in this, and I think community groups at the ground level have the opportunity to go deeper in the community and get the message out. I mean, Lead Free New Jersey is a good example, of how you are delivering the message deeper and deeper into the community. But we all know there's a lot. It's hard to get people's attention. We all know that. And you can't say it enough because you think you've just said it for the millionth time and everyone must know this, and then you have a new person in the room and all of a sudden, aha, they get it. And we keep going on that because this is kind of work that's never done, is my observation. But there are a lot of groups out there, and I think Lead Free New Jersey deserves a lot of credit for bringing the message, certainly about healthy homes and lead, to a much broader audience in New Jersey who haven't had a homegrown community organization.
So for the grant piece specifically, I have several thoughts on it. I think and I'm only 5 years into the game, but what I appreciate is that I've been seasoned enough to work with some really good institutions and seasoned enough to work with some bad institutions. And on the bad side, it's more of there's never equity built into how funding is distributed. Recently, I had an institution approach us, and they wanted us to be a part of a program, and they were applying for $600,000, and they were like, "We can offer you $5." I said, "5? You're getting $600,000? That makes no sense." You're saying, and then, and they broke down the budget. They had some graduate fellows that were getting $20,000 each, and I said, "Okay, these individual members of your community are worth more than my entire organization." Makes no sense. Obviously, we turned that down. Fortunate enough, when we have worked with people like Dr. Buckley, Dr. Lombach, and even Dr. Zormar, is they care about community and they understand and they say, "Okay, Anthony, well, what's equitable for you? What's the programs you want to do?" Oftentimes, researchers and academics, again, trying to look for the next thing that'll kill you, or the next NSF grant, or the next NIH grant, or the next whatever acronym grant. And they just they research the things that are funded and not the things that community members want. And so as community members that are like, "Hey, no, these are the things that we want research, these are the things that we need to talk about." We've been fortunate enough to work with Rutgers and IOSHI specifically, the CEED pilot and things like that, to say, "These are the things that we want to talk about, and please fund us in an equitable way." And they said yes. And so then it allows the research to be done in a way that's really, really community-based. It allows our community to have exposure. At the Jersey Waterworks conference earlier this year, I mentioned that one of our students, as a result, she wanted to be a nurse. We did this project. She switched her major to chemical engineering and got a full ride to NJIT. So completely changing the course of her life by getting funding to do research that the community wants to do. But not every institution is like that. And that's again, the onus is sometimes on the institution and sometimes on the community group to have the voice and the agency to say, "No, this isn't right, and we're not going to allow you to do this in our community." And so we have to act as a somewhat of gatekeeper sometimes, and that's unfortunate. And then, there's also bureaucracies within the institution, and then, and it's crazy how much more I've learned about the academic world in our researcher art, because also there's, the bureaucracy of institutions when it comes to funding. And sometimes it's not on the researcher or the PhD candidate, sometimes it's on the advisor, sometimes it's on the department, and sometimes it's on who you're working with. So there's so many things and that I didn't know going into this that thankfully I know now, so I'm able to operate more smoothly and protect our organization and our community better. But it also allows me to navigate in rooms like this. And I'm able to speak on levels with, PhDs, or, doctors and scientists, and discuss things that are really, really important to me, and come at it from we really want this to be community owned and managed. And people are hearing this, because that's kind of not where academia is at right now, but in a few years, that's where it's going to be.
Do you guys want to do the cookies?
So the only thing I want to add is I've been doing partnerships with communities for about my whole career at UHSI. We had one of the first EJ grants in Alabama, and I went down there. And one of the things that I have learned through many years, if you don't listen, you're not going to learn. Secondly, I don't care how deadly you think something is. If the community doesn't believe it to be deadly, you got nothing. You really do. Without community partnership, you have no intervention strategy, you have no message delivered, you have no product that you can point to. Unless our product is the mice in the labs, our ability to facilitate change stops in the lab without community partnership. So if I go to something and there is nobody from the community, a town meeting or whatever else, I know that project is not going anywhere. And the reality is, without our community partnerships, nothing we do at UHSI matters.
Do you want to close on that, or Anthony, do you have a closing statement? Elise?
I would just say, as researchers, the researchers in the room, please trust your community partners, and community partners be open to what the researchers have to say. And it is a balance. It is not, or if I had a better analogy, it's a dance. And one of the things that is this journey of academia has been very, very rewarding to me personally and to my community. Granted, when I tell people, hey, we're published authors, they kind of stare at me blankly, but when I say it in a room of academics, y'all understand what I'm talking about. So, you know, it's this back and forth, and I think it's one of those things, is like, we have to be in the driver's seat more as community organizations in order to really, really change the landscape of academia and research, but we can do it, and it's so vital. Because, you know, it's not, and we made so many jokes about like the everything that can kill you, but there's a lot of hope in this room. There's a lot of hope in the research that is being done and the possibility, the unlimited possibility of what science can do. And I'm all about liberation, and that includes the liberation of knowledge.
Well, I'd just like to say thank you to Yoshi and all the faculty here. IELTS has had the good fortune of working with Yoshi for a long time. Brian was a star expert in one of a video that we made called Dust Does Not Discriminate. This is many, many years ago, about how to understand lead hazards in your home and what to do about them. And then we made 2 more after that. One was called Arrest the Pests in Your Nest, about how to deal with cockroaches and rodents. Then there's another one called Attack of the Mold Spores. So very, very good stuff. Right? You can find them all online, and Brian is one of our experts. And anyway, I feel like we've had a really good working relationship, and I appreciate it.
Excellent. Let's give everybody a hand.